Hey, everybody, we are back, and our special guest today is someone I first heard back on the radio way back when I was probably in late high school in Southern California on the big jazz channel down there called KKGO. And it was this incredible recording, and I loved it from the moment I heard it, and I had to go out and buy this thing, and I immediately went out, but probably that day or the following day, to buy this thing. And I think the needle was coming out of the other side. I played it so many times. But he is a critically acclaimed trumpeter, flugelhornist, trombonist, and he's an exclusive Yamaha clinician from Washington, D.C., with a career that has gone on for decades as a member of the United States Air Force Premier Jazz Ensemble, the Airmen of Note. He's performed with many of the world's finest artists and entertainers, with a list that I can't read everybody here because it's just too extensive, but this includes such luminary artists as Dizzy Gillespie, Doc Severinsen, Tony Bennett, Louis Bellson, Henry Mancini, Stanley Turrentine, Lena Horne, and even Wynton Marsalis. So welcome our guest today, the one, the only Mr. Vaughn Nark. It's great to have you here, buddy.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for giving me such a great privilege to talk to our brothers and sisters who are cursed by loving the instrument that we do. It's our curse, but it's a beautiful curse.
It's a beautiful curse. Hey, well, the first thing I want to ask you, Vaughn, is tell us about your time with the Airmen of Note. What an amazing band. And boy, you must have been like, what, 17 years old, right out of high school, I think, right?
Well, I was pretty young, as a very young. Of course, my dad was a wonderful trumpeter. He started me at 6 years old. And when he saw that the interest that I had, especially in jazz, although he started me the way we all start, 200 years from now, it's still going to be the Arbin book, Holst Clark. Not so much the Clark, but certainly the Arbin. So, but when Dad saw just how interested I was specifically in jazz, he pulled me aside and he says, I want you to really start to listen to Dizzy Gillespie, because there's something so distinctive about his phrasing, his chord progressions, his sound, his use of rhythmic patterns that is so, you might pick up some ideas from him. So it wasn't easy for me to, the little area I came from, the coal region in Pennsylvania, it wasn't easy to get many of Dizzy's albums, but my older brother was a wonderful musician, although he was an accordionist, but my brother played like Leon Sash and Art Van Dam. He was very into chord progression. So I listened to one of the Dizzy's albums my brother had, and gentlemen, I've mentioned this story 1,000 times, and I'm privileged to mention it 1,000 times more. Something rose up inside me that was, I didn't understand, but I knew I was meant to follow somehow. And that is to not only meet this man, and Jesus, I was like 8 years old, but I had a will I wanted to play next to him. Now, I figured this was just a little boy's fantasy or whatever, but it was so powerful. And as years went on by, I was able to achieve that dream when he allowed me to sit in with him for the first time at Washington's historic Blues Alley. I was a total stranger when I came up to him, but I was introduced to him by a wonderful older Italian man by the name of Louis Belushi, who saw me at the club and said, well, boy, kid, I see you here all the time. What do you must love this. I said, oh, sir, I'm trying to get to just to say hello to him. I can't break through. He's always surrounded with people, and I'm kind of, I'm just doing the best I can. So he says to me, come to the club tomorrow night early. I know Dizzy. I used to drive him all around New York City. Come to the club. I'm going to introduce you to him. Well, I went home, and back in them days, all we had were cassette recorders. There were no CDs. So I had a cassette of some of the things I had recorded, hoping that I would be able to play this for Dizzy. And Louis introduced me to him, and I said, Mr. Gillespie, I've been following you since I'm a little boy. Could I turn this machine on and you listen to? And he looked at me and he laughed and he smiled. We never said yes or no, but I turned the machine on, and well, by this time everybody's in his dressing room. The band's showing up, we're getting close to the gig and everything. And it looked to me like he wasn't even listening. He was just going through his warm up, getting ready to hit, because Dizzy always started on time. And so I turned the machine off, figuring, well, I did the best I could. And all of a sudden he says to me, "Is that you, kid?" And I said, "Yes, sir, it is." He said, "Well, you sound okay." And guys, I don't know where I had the balls to say this, but I said, "Mr. Gillespie, it would be my lifelong dream to sit in with you. I promise you, sir, I will not embarrass you." And he looked at me, he didn't say a word. He just laughed. Well, now he's going down the steps to hit the bandstand, and he sees me over in the corner, and I get this finger like this. And I knew what that meant. Well, I wasn't going to be presumptuous enough to bring my horn in the club. My God. But when I saw this, I ran like a bat out of hell out of Blues Alley all the way down to the parking lot, got my horn out of the trunk, ran back up the big hill. There was no warm up, mouthpiece in the horn. The tune's already started. Beautiful tune called Barcelona, Dizzy used to open up with back in the late 70s, Al Gaffa tune. And he points to me to solo. And guys, as trumpet players, it was the moment of truth. I played everything I knew. Then I played everything I thought I knew. Then I played everything I didn't know. And I gave it everything and the audience was wonderful. And Dizzy gave me a hug. And in my ear, he says, "Stay up here." I played the whole night, every night of that gig. And many, many times since then, he'd invite me to his hotel room. We talk about boxing. We talk about the trumpet. We this, that, and we established a friendship. And I achieved a dream, a boyhood dream that I never. And that night after 6 months after that, I was already on the Airmen, but I had my first album out, the album before LT Great, Bobby, that I recorded called Cutting Through. And then I recorded another one that was LT Great. And so I already had a powerful fire under my ass as a young boy. And Dizzy just poured propane on it. And then he ignited it. And then I played Blues Alley as a leader. And one thing led to another. And it all went back to the beauty and the chance he gave me at an instinct. Because Dizzy knew how to read people. If you were, pardon my French, if you were full of shit, he knew it. But if you were genuine, he felt that too. And that friendship, there are no words. Even now, I'm almost rising off the chair. I'm 65 years old now. I was, 26 back then? And it all, so that's what Dizzy Gillespie did for me.
What an amazing relationship you had for the rest of his life, right?
Absolutely. I've been diabetic since 79. We talked about that from time to time. And there was a point later on in Dizzy's life when I went to see him, and he didn't even say hello. He said to me, "I got it too." And I said, "What do you got too?" He said, "Oh, I got this type 2 stuff. And now I got to start doing this, and I got to watch this." And I said, "Oh, you'll be all right. I have type 1. Clark Terry was type 1. I mean, you just have to listen to the doctor. You'll be all right. This, that, and the other thing." And then, so at any rate, yes, I call him from time to time. Then I brought him into solo with the Airmen of Note, and he loved our band. And then he had me on that Wolf Trap thing that Wolf Trap did for Diz back in '87, where we had John Faddis and Freddie and Wynton and Jimmy Owens and Lalo Schifrin, and that great big band that we recorded at Wolf Trap. And he was just a man who just made you feel good to be around him. I loved the man, absolutely adored him. And he was a cigar smoker, so he'd give me cigars he'd get from Bill Cosby, and he'd smuggle in from Cuba, and we talk about the horn. He was always very honest about his playing and the horn. He said, the goddamn thing it's just bound to make a fool out of all of us, the experience was, oh my God.
Well, and he's said it. There's a quote I think I've read where he just about you, where he says, Vaughn Nark is really something special. And I think that's just shows the kind of person that he is, and how he felt about you as well.
And then I used to bring in the second night. I brought the flugelhorn and my valve trombone to the gig because I would play harmony lines to him. And if we do Manteca, on a trombone, I could hit the boop beep, boop beep, boop beep, and I, nice and fat and thick, and I had harmony lines. I knew all the charts, I knew all the thing, and it was, my God, it hits me right now. God, rest in peace. He was our international treasure.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about, your one of the things that impresses me a lot when I see a fine player is consistency. And when you were playing lead, it doesn't matter that you were playing for the Airmen of Note or whoever it might be. What do you do? What's your philosophy about playing? I know that it can be so varied amongst trumpet players, and that we got to figure it out for ourselves. But what really helped you expand your playing in general? And I don't mean just your range, because you've had this tremendous range. I mean, that's part of it, but just everything in general. How do you approach the instrument, and how do you, kind of keep yourself motivated?
Well, Bobby, as a young boy, I was never interested in labels. I didn't want to be a high note player. I didn't want to be a jazz player. I didn't want to be a classical player. I wanted to be a trumpet player. So to be able to accomplish the task of whatever the music called for, anything, high, low, mid, anything. You should be able to get it, because all the instrument is a tool that reveals our spirit. It's a ruthless tool, but nonetheless, it's there, and it reveals our spirit. So we should be able to produce what's asked for. And I wanted to be challenged, never take it easy, never take the easy road. I would rather fall on my ass trying to reach something than not have the balls to go for it in the first place. Now, I have fallen on my ass, and I will again, but when you stop having the juice to go for something you're not quite sure you can reach, then you are old, or then you are losing your motivation. And our instrument is so wonderful, yet it can be, everything we're trying to do is going through the space of a nickel or a dime, the radius of our chop. And by the way, I'm jealous of you two guys, because when I look at my upper lip and I look at you guys look like babies. I don't see, you look so nice. And
that's why we're wearing the mustaches.
Believe me, I look like I got a hot, somebody's heated up a mouthpiece to red hot and put it on my lip there.
Well, in my case, of course, I mark easy, but you can see my red badge of courage, there it is. But so the motivation comes from the instrument is capable of such colossal things, and we're able to hit all the moods of our human experience on our instruments, all of them, from mid to high, to the extroverted to introverted. Anything can come. It's not the horn, it's us. And so that's the motivation, because the instrument is determined to make a fool out of all of us, and in the end, it will. It always wins. But every now and then it'll give us back a little something. It'll say, "Now you be a good boy, and you come back tomorrow, and maybe I'll give you a little more candy. But if you're not a good boy, then I'm going to ruin your day." it's a roller coaster. We strap in, we do the best we can, but whatever we're asked to do and we agree to do professionally, whether or not it's to play something orchestral or whether it's to play something fairly, at least I will never be asked to do anything classical. As a young boy, I went a different path, but whether it's extroverted or whether it's introverted or whatever, we should be able to get out of the instrument. We should be able to produce it, and that's my motivation. And it's no different. I mean, let's face it. What we're trying to do when we get to the gig, we're all seasoned professionals now. But when we get to the gig, we are going to the gig with somewhat of a very similar childlike innocence, where we want to give our very, very best to the gig. And then when the gig is over, we want to leave that gig knowing we did give our best, because unfortunately there will come a time it will be our last one. We're not meant to know these things, but that's the way we should approach it. Going into it with that same childlike innocence as if it's your first professional thing, and you leave it knowing, hey, I did the best I could. That's all I could do at the time, and that's our motivation.
Actually, I'm going to ask you something a little different that I've asked anybody else on here. How has your practice, for lack of a better term, routine changed, or has it not changed since from the time you were young to where you're at now? What are the differences in how you approach the trumpet?
It really hasn't. I don't like the term practice. Because we're always hearing, even as we're speaking to each other right now, there are lines going through our minds. We're hearing something. We might not realize it, but it's in our subconscious. So our goal is to get it out of the instrument. For me, a better term is trained, like a fighter, like someone, they know they have an event that's coming up. That's when they want to peak. They want to peak in the ring. They don't want to peak in training camp. They don't want to peak when the fight is over. They want to be at their best when you have to play in the now. And for me, I just feel the energy of whatever it is that's demanded at the time, and to find it within my own soul, my own spirit, and to physically have it come out of the horn. As a young kid, about 8 years old, I had a pretty good, reliable G, sometimes above it. But I was a typical young boy. I was fascinated by the strongest weightlifter, the strongest boxer. So when Dad gave me the horn and I realized what it is capable of doing, I aggravated toward the extroverted part of it, the high part of it, because boy, it just made me feel good. Whoa, wow! I remember I was about 7 years old, and I had my own quartet when I was very young. I had a phony union card. I was working all the clubs, and I remember I was just one day messing around. I was playing the old standard "Never on Sunday," the old tune. Well, on the bridge, I took it up an octave, and whoa! I said, "Whoa! What the hell is this?" Oh, wow! First of all, I could do it, and then it made me feel so good. And then when I'd watch all of our masters, of course, I was exposed to Dad being a trumpet player. Dad's big influences, of course, were Harry James and Bunny Berrigan, and of course Louis, and all the influences they had. And then when I heard Doc Severinsen was my first major influence, but because of Dad, I realized, wait a minute, when I'm listening to this guy, I'm not only listening to him, I'm listening to those who influenced him. So let's go back. Let's go back and who's Charlie Shavers, who's Randy Brooks, who, whoa. Yeah, and then of course when I heard Maynard, oh my God, the heart, Jesus, the heart, Jesus, and I would have never picked up the trombone if it wouldn't have been for Maynard. No way, because I'll tell you guys get a kick out of this. I had a pretty good upper register, and all the old timers were saying, don't play the trombone. If you go to that trombone, you're going to destroy your trumpet chops. You won't be able to play the trumpet anymore. Well, Dad did get me a valve trombone. And when I first put the mouthpiece in, whoa, I could play it. And it felt wonderful. But then when I put the trombone down and I went back to the trumpet, guys, I couldn't play a middle C. I had nothing.
So I know that feeling well.
There you go. So, and I'm thinking, oh my God, they were right. I lost everything. I lost my, 10 minutes later, I had it back. But I got to the point where the switching, I realized, wait a minute, I'm developing an embouchure over an existing one, and it got better and better and better. But I love the incisiveness of the valve trombone. You know, the lines you can play, the edge you can play with the speed. And I love the baritone horn because that's a whole different timbre, so thick and so beautiful. And now, and the flugelhorn, in the end, I don't know how the hell I'm going to be remembered. I'd like to be remembered as somebody that made the best contribution that they could, depending on the times that they lived in. But the flugelhorn is, I make love to the flugelhorn. I attack the trumpet. You know, if there's something gentle or sensitive, I'm going. I still use the upper register on the flugelhorn somewhat, but it has its own. So all the instruments, the trumpet, the flugelhorn, the valve trombone, the baritone horn, and I sing too, but not in a cheap way. Maybe a nice Chet Baker ballad, you know, and I like to scat sing, you know, like there's a, you know, it all goes back to Dizzy. You know, I love it. It makes my spirit feel good. So all these things, they develop their own personalities. And, but the motivation is whatever the music is, whatever you hear, try to get out of your spirit, try to get it out of the horn as long as your mechanics are correct. There are certain things I can do now, I'm 65, that are just as nice as when I was 18. And some things even stronger. And then there are others that they're not quite, you know, they're not quite the same, but we evolve and this, that, and the other. We're supposed to. But as far as still being that trumpet, I want that horn to sound commanding. I want it to be commanding, so that when that horn is, I hope I don't blow. I'm dead cold now. I mean, I've been talking to you for a half hour, but when, I mean, it's just there. You know, I hear it and boom. You know, I don't advise doing that. That's not. But maybe that's why my lip looks the way it does. But nonetheless, it's just in the will, and what you hear, boom. And by the way, that attack, that was a reasonable good high A. Doc Reinhardt, when I took my first lesson from, I only had 2 appointments with Doc Reinhardt, you know, and he's one of our embouchure masters, of course. We had Doc Reinhardt, we had Bill Costello, we had Roy Stevens, we had Carmine Caruso. But Doc Reinhardt says to me, kid, how do you attack? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, how do you attack? I said, well, I guess a taw. And maybe as I go higher, maybe it turns into a T. I don't know. I just attack. He said, okay, do you ever attack a note using just air? And I said, yeah. He said, well, so it's like a haw sometimes. Well, yeah. And then he says, okay, can you double and triple tongue? I said, yes. He said, well, isn't a caw an attack too? And I said, well, I never thought of it, but I guess it is. Then he said, try this. Give me 4 caws, and then give me some caws on a high C. And I said, a high C, Doc? I've never cawed. I never attacked the high C using a caw. I never saw any technical exercise or anything like that. He said, try it. Boy, the high C came out clean as a whistle. He said, okay, go for the G. So did the G. And they said, go play the double high C with a caw. And for me, it centered everything in, and I was able to attack these notes right on the head, the way Dizzy used to, you know, Roy Eldridge, Louis. There were no scoops in their attack, no gliss going into the note. It was, if you notice in their playing, it was boom. And for me, and I always, any students I have, I try to expose them, try this call attack, because as long as your embouchure mechanics are sound, you have a reasonably good track, your corners are tight, you're still relaxed in the center, that you can channel this air, and you just simply take your breath in and you're releasing a note with your epiglottis. And Lord, for me, it was amazing. And I said, my God, Doc. And he said, another thing you're doing that's very good. He says, I notice you're flicking your tongue over your upper lip. You're wetting your embouchure a little bit. You're not saturating it, but you're wetting it. He said, this is helpful because as you get older, and he said, you don't play dry, Vaughn, either. And I said, what do you mean dry? He said, your upper or lower lip, it's not dry. He says, dry players, the older they get, they can take them longer and longer and longer to find their embouchure. They'll sound stronger on the third set than the first set. Well, what happens on the first set if you really got to send something out there? He said, well, just a little bit of lubrication can help your embouchure glide on the pivot or the track that we all have, and some of our tracks are more developed than others, from low to high. We all have a track. Just look in the embouchure, look in the mirror when you're playing low C to high C, maybe above that, and you're going to see a minuscule musculature movement. It's not drastic. And in fact, Reinhardt didn't like that he even used the term pivot because it connotated somewhat of a drastic movement. No. We all have a track. Some of it's more developed. And he said, just a little bit of lubrication can help you follow your ascending and descending track. So these two little principles he gave me, they were, and your sight is trumpet players 50 and above, right? Well, our instrument is ruthless. It doesn't give a damn how old we are. And if we're not playing reasonably correctly, it's gonna ruin our day. And just these things help maintain healthy embouchure mechanics, because after all, our embouchure is just like a fuel injector. You know, the real fuel is coming from our chakra. You know, our energy center within the center of our body. That's where we're channeling all of our fire through, and all this is a fuel injector to be able to keep that mouthpiece in position to be able to withstand what it is that we're asking of it. And if it's not right, then we're gone after 10 minutes. We're a 2-minute hero, and then we got nothing left. But if everything is okay, by the end of that third hour, that third set, you still got plenty of juice, you know, and you can put it in the bank for the next day.
No, that's a great way to look at it. The fuel injector. I'd never heard it in that term before, but it makes perfect sense. And you know, when you were talking about the different instruments, the euphonium and the valve trombone and flugelhorn trumpet, and the way you described the flugelhorn, I've heard Guido Basso say the same thing. You know, the trumpet, you attack it, but you caress the flugelhorn. So, but let me turn.
He was such a magnificent flugelhorn player, and of course, as a young boy, I always had to play a lot of lead, and I liked the upper register of the horn. But any first trumpet player who was also a wonderful improviser, I always gravitated toward them. I didn't find a whole lot, but my dear friend Ken Smuckle, who was on the Airmen before me, and we're lifelong friends to this day, was a wonderful improviser. Bobby Shue was a perfect example of this. But he started off as a jazz player until his chops got developed at this and the other thing. But he is a magnificent Marv Stam, magnificent flugelhorn players, and I gravitated toward that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I love that horn.
No, interesting, because Guido, you know, not a lot of people know, but you know, he could play really fiery bebop, and he could play first trumpet and stuff too. You know, he had Arnie Tchaikovsky next to him, so he didn't need to play the double G's. But boy, what a beautiful flugel player!
Yeah, and we give our audience different colors. And so I'm not always pounding them with something extroverted. And the contrast between the two, Paul and Bobby, is your that's what we're supposed to do. But all of our human emotion, the high, the low, the introverted, the sad, the ruthlessly, and then the man, then you got the audience right there where you want them,
So, well, let's shift gears and talk about your longtime association with Yamaha instruments. So do you play the valve trombone and everything, all Yamaha?
Yes, except for the flugelhorn. Now, my horns were back in '84. My car was broken into, and all my horns were stolen in Washington, D.C. Even worse, all my personal mouthpieces. And if you look at my chops, my mouthpieces, they got to go there. I don't have a choice, because I've worn into my tissue. Then in the early '80s, Sandy Sandberg, I developed a friendship with Sandy, and Sandy gave me the Doc was marketing the Con back then. I played the Con for years. I played the Schilke X4, wonderful trumpets. But then I went with Yamaha in 1990. Eddie Boyer, the late Eddie Boyer, he gave me the horn, and I've been with them since 1990. But so everything is Yamaha except for this. And Bobby Shue helped me with this because I called him up. I said my horns were stolen, and I was playing a trumpeter flugelhorn. It was a fine flugelhorn. Well, he said, okay, I'll put you in touch with a Quainon. So he got me in touch with a music store in Torrance, California. He said they have some Quainons. I bought the Quainon from them. So, and I've had this horn since then. And guys, you'll understand this. I'm attached to these horns. I will not buy this. This horn needs a lot of work, but my soul is in here. I don't want another one. It's like my first girl. It's the first kiss. There are others that come, but there's something special about that first one. So this is just the standard Quainon. It needs a lot of work. And Yamaha has this, this is their biggest horn. I like big horns. I mean, if you're a trombone player, you should be able to play any trumpet, no matter what bore. This horn is the biggest they make. It's got this extra large bell. I guess this is Eric's idea. I don't know if it helps or not, but nonetheless, I want it. And I want the trumpet to have just a little more edge than everything. So maybe there is something to where the silver plating might help with that as opposed to brass. I don't know. But these are wonderful instruments. They're not the problem. I'm the problem. I was never worried about horns, mouthpieces. I was worried about getting the gig, doing the gig, getting the next one, and leaving a good reputation behind. So I'm not into equipment or anything. I'm into playing the horn and leaving it all behind you, like Louis used to say. Leaving it all behind you. Swiss Chris Lee yours.
Swiss Chris, that's right.
Yeah, man. I'm in physics, all this stuff. So that's.
Well, let me ask you this. Throw this out. So, do you if you need to play trumpet, and the whole piece say calls for trumpet, but it's lower and it's lyrical and it's this big fat sound you need to get, and then you need to play something way up in the stratosphere at the end of the chart. When you're in concert, or when you record it, do you ever switch mouthpieces, or do you play everything on one mouthpiece?
I never switched. Although some of it, here we are, it all goes back to whatever works for you.
Exactly.
I know some of our greatest to do these things. They do switch mouthpieces. I switch horns. I don't switch mouthpieces. Although if it works, then listen, for us, we need any friend we can get. If it works, but for me, I do not switch mouth. I stay on the same. I can adapt to the timbre that's called for. But I don't switch mouthpieces. This design, Terry Warburton's going to be marketing these for me, fellas. This is a little drastic. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is my own design. A great mouthpiece maker named Leroy Green. I said to Leroy, can you can you make me a mouthpiece that has the smallest inner cup diameter you can make, but then make my cup have a rim have an undercut so that the cup is deep enough so I can play a low F sharp and I can play the whole horn, and yet I'll have the advantage of having to have my lips very close together to help with compression with the very small inner cup diameter with that rim undercut, so I can't touch the cup with my lip, like unfortunately happens to us when we get tired, and all kind of horrors can happen. We have a world of triumph here, and we also have a world of tragedy, So I said,
we all know it very well.
There you go. So, and then my buddy, Doug Elliott, who's a fantastic trombone mouthpiece maker. Doug has this thing with Lexan. So, and so I have this, so if I'm playing outside, I have no problems because and I have the same thing with the flugelhorn. So this maintains heat. I can actually feel heat when I'm playing, and it has to do with this rim. And anything that helps with circulation helps us, because when our circulation is impaired, mine is impaired because of diabetes for many reasons. But when our circulation is impaired, that's the beginning of the end for us. We got to have that flow, and these Lexan rims. And Terry Warburton will be marketing these for me down the line.
Well, you'll have to let us know when those are up, and we'll make sure that we let everybody know about that too.
That's beautiful. Paul, they could be a disaster for some people because they may say, oh, this is too small. We'll give it a chance, because you do have the rim undercut is a phenomenal idea, because, we've all heard, especially as jazz players, if we're playing extended choruses, we start to tire. Instead of the other thing, if our chops touch the cup, we're dead. That is it. And this is physically impossible because the undercut is so deep that, and we want to be able to play the whole horn from low to high without it sounding labored, or you're sacrificing this just for that. We want to sound glorious in all registers, And if you hear the extreme register, like above double C to triple C, if you're cursed enough to hear that, well, then you want to play it. And there are areas where you can use it. Now, you don't use it every chart, for God's sake, but you don't use a hammer to fix a watch, but if you do hear it, it can be very effective. And
well, it's the right tool for the right job. And, everybody has a different shoe size. I remember going to see Joe Marcinkiewicz back in the early 80s. And he said, man, if I could patent the 10.5 C trumpet mouthpiece, and make that my own, or if I could patent the 10.5 men's shoe size, I'd be a billionaire, but yeah. Everybody requires different sizes and different, for different needs.
And the problem, Paul, with us as trumpet players, we've all been through this, we've all done this, is when we do switch to a new mouthpiece, we can, at first, for the first 2 days, I can do things here that I couldn't do before. But then by that third or fourth day, when the muscle shock wears in, we've lost it. And then we wind up going back to what we switched from. And if we do it again, we wind up going back to there's the secret. If you wind up going back, that's the one you should have never got off of in the first place. The mouthpiece isn't the issue, you are. But there is a much greater knowledge of embouchure mechanics now as compared to when I was a kid coming up in the early 60s. When I was a little boy, I used to look at these mouthpiece, the placements of, I look at Harry James, I look at Doc, or I look at Roy Eldridge, and I say, boy, Doc is mostly on the bottom. Harry James is just the opposite. What the hell's going on here? What's happening? Louis is off to the right. Maynard is off to the right. Charlie Shavers is, what's going on here? And then another player might be a little bit off to the left, and I'm wondering, whoa, what's happening? Now we have a greater
Or
knowledge.
down, and some are up, and all
and
of
Buddy
those.
Berrigan, but Buddy's horn was like now our two of my dear Italian friends, Andrea Tofinelli and the other one, Andrea Giuffaretti. They got Bunny Berrigan's embouchure. They got Doc Reinhardt would call it a perfect type 4. And it's mostly on the lower, and there's a little. Then the horn is angling up. And that's Roy Steve. That's Costello. And it's perfect. It works, but we all can't play like that.
That's the thing. That's exactly the thing.
But what Mother Nature gave us.
Yeah, regardless of how you look. I mean, Paul and I, we've held workshops, we've given lessons. Yeah, we've talked about this with a lot of people because they're afraid of, well, I don't look right. My horn's not straight out and this and that. We're like, forget it. Let's worry about how you sound, not how you look,
It's all in the body of the note and the resonance that we get from low to mid to high to find our best position, especially when you're starting a youngster. You can tell if you have a little bit of knowledge of embouchure just by the way they speak. What teeth do I see? Do I see their upper incisors when they speak, or do I see their lower teeth? You notice everybody's different. Well, when you see somebody speak, like let's say the old football coach Don Shula, you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
The guy with the jaw that came out, Bill Cowher. He's an upstream player. If you gave a mouthpiece to Bill Cowher, that son of a bitch is going down to the bottom. And another guy like John Madden, the late John, all you see is his upper incisors. He's probably going to be a downstream player, and he's going to be going up a little bit more. And it all goes back to just what our mechanics are. Doc Reinhardt understood this, and that's why he typed the embouchures. We can't all play like Bunny Berrigan. We have to deal with, once we understand our track, our pivot, what's going on. That's what we have to. What nature gave us. That's how we develop.
Sorry, there's a great saying I love, and it says, "Be yourself, because everyone else is taken."
There you go.
And I really love that. Well, Vaughn, we are just about out of time, and we really appreciate you being here. We're going to have to bring you back for part 2 the next time. And, we were talking earlier because I mentioned the album, and you've had a reissue of the vinyl on the CD. Now, where can everybody get those at?
Well, everything is on my website,
okay.
And I think you guys will probably be linking just www.vaughnnark.com. And Summit Records decided to put both these on one CD, and we released it about 2 years ago, and it's entitled Back in the Day. And this is my quintet, but I've recorded several other things since then, and everything I've recorded is on Summit Records, and they've been wonderful to me. I have a nice relationship. They're a fine company, and on a lot of the things I turn myself into a brass section sometimes because I can't afford to hire like 8 horn players, but if I can play 4 trombone parts, 2 baritone horn parts, 4 trumpet parts, and maybe a high part too, then I'm the whole brass section, and I'm easy to get along with. So I don't have to worry about the guy hanging over on the end. I'm the guy that's going to hang over on the end. But in the end, all our instrument is just a glorious piece of tubing it's capable of beautiful things and all of our moods. And we're all here to make the best contribution we can for as long as we can and honor our masters that came before us.
Well, I love it. I couldn't agree more, Vaughn.
And any kids that are watching, don't do this. This is my last vice. I don't drink anymore. I exercise. I take care of myself. But this is bad, so don't do it. But I'm a hypocrite, so what can I say? We all have our flaws.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out here to be with us. We will get this posted. We'll send you a link and let everybody know about it. And for everybody that's out there, do do take the time to go check out vaughnnark.com and check out all of his offerings over there. And we appreciate you very much. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen, before I let you go, I want to congratulate you for what you're giving back to our instrument and in the way you're doing it internationally. You're getting all kind of people to give you their thoughts, and you're making a tremendous contribution to the third oldest form of communication. We got the human voice, we got the drum, and we got the shofar, our trumpet.
That's
All
right.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaughn.
Keep swinging.